Hey everybody, Signa here with the Bullish Bears, and in this video we're going to continue to introduce the different parts of a futures trading perspective. Today we're going to talk about Globex. I get a lot of questions about Globex from people who are new to futures, and I want to help maybe address some of the concerns and the pitfalls and the hazards that are inherent in the Globex, and maybe even provide a little bit of reassurance, because if we are uncomfortable about the idea of trading in a certain area, we miss these opportunities to trade, then we're handicapping ourselves, right? So let's kind of go through a few things, some general questions that I get asked a lot. Where's the close? Now, that's a good question, and each broker often presents this differently. But when it comes to the ES and the NASDAQ, retail traders are not allowed to trade past 4 o'clock. So there's the 4 p.m. close, and that's East Coast time. But brokers like Thinkorswim will show that the market is still open until 4:15. And then it'll show that we go from RTH to Globex. And on my broker here on Thinkorswim, the darker shaded area, that's the RTH, or the regular cash session. And the lighter shaded area, that's the Globex. And this broker, Thinkorswim, shows that division at 4:15. But then there's another close that happens at 5 p.m. And at 5 p.m., that's where the brokers shut everything down, and they go in, they handle settlements, and they rebalance everything, and they get ready to open back up at 6 p.m. So there's a 4 o'clock, a 4:15, and a 5 o'clock. Which one of these should we use when we say the close? I always recommend to people, use whatever your broker is using for the close. And the easiest way to answer that question is to go to a daily chart. I know it may seem funny, but if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. So we're looking at a daily candle there, that big red candle, because I'm on a daily chart, and that was yesterday's close. And if I zoom in here a little bit, I'm gonna zoom in really tight. We can see where the market closed yesterday, because this daily candle has open, high, low, and close, right? So that is the closing price of yesterday, 39.14. So let's go back and see, where were we yesterday afternoon when it was 39.14? Is that the 4 o'clock close? Is that the 4:15 close? Or is that the 5 o'clock close? So we're just going to kind of zoom in again. And I actually want to go to a 1 minute rather than a 5 minute. And we're going to look at where 5 o'clock, or where these different closes are. So let's just start with 4. 1600 is 4 o'clock. And you can see the candle that I marked is nowhere close to 39.14. So we know that the broker is not using the 4 o'clock close, because now that I'm zoomed in, you can see we're nowhere near that area. So let's go to 4:15. And on this broker, 4:15 is where the gray and the darker RTH session begins. And again, here we can also see that price is not at 39.14. So we know it's not that. So the broker is recording the close based on the 5 o'clock time frame. All right. So that's a good place to start. Now we know at least what the broker is looking at when it says the close. It's talking about the 5 p.m. close. What do we have after that? Well, a question that I get asked a lot is, are there any tools that I can use to trade during the Globex? And yeah, there really are. Some of the same tools that we would use in the regular trading session, like the open range. a 5-minute open range works in the daytime and it works in the nighttime. So it's really great for that. So let's go in and mark that. Now, remember, when it comes to things like open range, we're always going to have a little bit of difficulty on, is it going to present an opportunity today, or is it not going to present an opportunity today? And what would that look like? But let's go ahead and mark it out first, because that's a great way to start. And then from that, we'll look to identify any opportunities. So we want to mark the 5-minute high and the 5-minute low. And we're going to move this just so we can see a little bit. We know that the close was 39.14. So if we need to, we could put that line back again, but we're just going to go ahead and get rid of it. So now we've got the open and we've got the 5-minute high and the 5-minute low. Now that open range doesn't have to be 5 minutes. When I was studying open range, I've used a 1 hour, a 30-minute, a 15-minute, a 5, a 1, and I've even used ticks and just went with pivot high and first pivot low. So you can use whatever open range you want. But there is another one that is specifically designed for Globex and was developed by the man who really promoted TPO charts. Now, we don't want to get into TPO charts today. It's not really something I want to dig into, but when he was putting all of that information together, he identified something called the initial balance, the IB. And the initial balance is always 1 hour long, and it starts at 6. So that never changes. From 6 to 7 is your 1 hour time frame. And what you would want to do is mark the high of that time frame and then the low of that time frame. A really easy way to do it is just to set your chart on a 1 hour time frame. And that way you already can see what the hour high is and what the hour low is. Makes things very simple, right? So when we do that, we want to mark, and we'll just use the lines for this. Let's just copy that. And we want to set one of these lines at 6 o'clock. And we want to set the other line at 7 o'clock. Maybe, there it goes. I think I did one of those wrong. The first line I didn't put in the right spot. I made it 1600, and it should have been, see, we want 6 o'clock, so it should have been 1800 for that one. Okay, so 1800 and 1900. And there's our initial balance from 6 to 7. All right. So what we would do is we would mark that initial balance, the high and the low of that candle, and we would draw that clear across the screen for the day. Just like when we have our open range and we draw it across the screen for the day, we want to do the same thing here, right? And what that gives us is a perspective of how much is getting done for the day. In the Globex, you got to think about, well, who's trading? The Asian markets come online. Well, first Australia comes online, and then the Asian markets come online. Asia closes, the Australia closes, Europe opens, and then we open, and then Europe closes, and we're through the day, and then we start the cycle all over again. So who's trading in this time frame? Well, at 6 and 7 o'clock at night, Australia, and then later on in the evening, those other markets. We're going to turn on those other markets just so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on out there. Okay, so we can see that there are the Hong Kong early open, the Shanghai early open, and then the Shanghai real open. And that's something that we all need to consider, right? Just like America has a pre-market session, so do the Asian markets, and so does the Australian market. there's a pre-market open for Australia. They have job numbers, unemployment numbers, central bankers. They've got the same kind of confluence that we have. We have to worry about who is speaking over there, who's having earnings, how those earnings may affect the market. We have to worry about their energy costs, supply chains, the same economic concerns that we have when we trade our time frame, we have to worry about during their time frame. So when you want to trade at night during the Globex session, it would really benefit you to have a news source that's telling you about what's going on in the local market of whatever country you're trading. For an example, Bloomberg offers Bloomberg Asia. Around 6 o'clock at night or so, they start streaming. And on Bloomberg, they will discuss and talk about what's going on in the Asian pre-market, what is up and what is down, and who's going to be speaking for the day and what kind of econ they have. All of those will give you a lot of insight on what to expect when their markets open up. Those are some of the best tools that you can use, considering we don't have our normal things like tick, trend, and advancing versus declining issues. We just don't have those in the nighttime. So we want to use whatever we can get. Knowing where the Asian markets are going to open is a really big deal. Being able to mark your open range and your initial balance will help out a lot. And when it comes to liquidity, people who are new to futures haven't quite caught the grasp of the concept yet, but a contract is created whenever you want one. So if you want to buy a contract, you don't have to worry about finding somebody willing to give you a contract. It's not like shares of stock, right? If there's a small selection of stock out there, then I have to be concerned about how many people want to buy it, right? And we'll compete for it. And if there's not enough free stock out there, then the short float and the squeeze and the things that we would normally focus on with stocks comes into effect. But when it comes to futures, that's not true. If you put your order on the dome and price passes through your order, you will be filled. There is a contract for you. So you don't have to worry about if there's enough liquidity. You will always be filled. It's a law. Okay, so if you have your order on the dome, say you put your order in at 39.10 and then price passes through 39.10, your order will be filled. No worries. All right, so there's always going to be liquidity, and there is more than enough participation, especially if you're trading in the smaller products. So the MNQ or the MES, they're more heavily traded in the nighttime. Not always, but if you look at the total volume on the day, you'll often see that those markets have a higher volume than the big ones, right? So we're not in Globex right now. We're actually in the regular trading session. But if I wanted to go in and look at the futures here and look at the total volume on the day, we can see that the MES has a lot of volume, not more than the ES. But the MNQ has much, much more volume than the NQ. Okay, so definitely has liquidity. And in the nighttime, it's the same thing. Plenty of liquidity. You can trade with no problems. So what have we covered so far? That there is a Globex session with 3 different closes from the regular trading session. And in the Globex, there is initial balance, which is always 1 hour from 6 to 7. And that if you were to use an open range of whatever time frame you wanted, it will be beneficial and it will help you. You're going to want to know who's actually open for the day, because they have holidays around the world, just like we have holidays, and they may not be the same holiday as ours, right? So don't just assume that Asia is going to be open. You want to check to make sure they actually are going to open. They have pre-markets, they have central bankers that talk. We have to be worried about all of that. And then we have the opportunity to trade. Now, during the Globex session, we want to make sure that we mark out our pivot points just like we would in a regular trading day. So we want to keep track of the Globex high and the Globex low, because if we revisit those areas while we're in the trading session, there's likely to be an opportunity, right? Just like how in the regular trading session, I would mark a high. And then the next time we come back to that high, I would anticipate some reaction in the market. Even right now, we have a high on the day. I would have that marked. And when we come back into that spot, I would anticipate some reaction from the market, right? So same thing. And that's the way we want to approach it. So I hope this video really helps you guys out. These are just simple, basic concepts, nothing complicated, but these are introductory videos designed not to be complicated. Knowing and understanding more about the Globex and more about how to trade the futures is how you get to the point where you can trade futures. So I appreciate your time. I look forward to seeing you at the next video.